My name is Marcus Thompson. For 7 years I was a janitor at the most secretive military installation in the world, Area 51. What I'm about to tell you will sound impossible, like the ravings of a conspiracy theorist who spent too much time on internet forums. But I have proof, documents, photographs, and something else, hulls, something that shouldn't exist on this planet. Before I begin, let me make one thing clear. They know I'm telling this story. They're allowing it. Because as that man in the black suit told me, nobody believes the truth when it sounds crazy enough. But I think you deserve to know, even if it changes nothing, even if you laugh at this and call it fiction. At least I'll have done my part. It all started on a Tuesday night in early September 2019, just 2 weeks before the infamous Storm Area 51 inches event that captured the world's attention. Part 1. The Janitor Who Saw Too Much. I'd been working the night shift at Groom Lake, what you call Area 51, since 2012. You'd be surprised how easy it was to get the job. They need people to clean, after all. The secret facilities, the classified research labs, the underground bunkers, they all accumulate dust just like your bedroom. The difference is, the dust in Area 51 sometimes glows in the dark, and you're instructed never to ask why. The hiring process was strange but not impossible. Background check. Of course. Polygraph tests that asked bizarre questions. Have you ever experienced missing time? Do you believe in extraterrestrial life? Would you report a coworker who claimed to see something unusual? I answered honestly. No, maybe, and yes. Apparently those were the right answers. My supervisor was a stern woman named Janet Mills, former military, walked with the kind of purposeful stride that made you automatically get out of her way. On my first day she gave me 3 rules that weren't in any employee handbook. 1. You clean what you're told to clean, when you're told to clean it. 2. You see nothing, hear nothing, and you definitely don't touch anything that isn't cleaning equipment. 3. If you ever see something that shouldn't exist, you turn around, you walk away, and you forget you saw it. Do these things, and you'll retire with a nice pension and all your memories intact. That last part should have been my first warning. For the first 5 years nothing extraordinary happened. I cleaned offices that looked like any government building, beige walls, fluorescent lights, computers from 2005 because the government never updates anything. I mopped hallways in Hangar 18, which despite all the legends mostly contained experimental aircraft that looked weird but distinctly human-made. Triangular stealth bombers, drones that could stay airborne for months, things that would become public military technology in 10 or 20 years. But there were restricted areas, sections of the base where my keycard wouldn't work, where armed guards stood 24/7, where even looking too long at the door would get you a friendly warning. S4 was one of those places, located not on the map you'd find online, but 17 miles south of the main Area 51 facility, built into the side of Papoose Mountain. From the outside, it looked like nothing this guy's desert mountain face. But I'd heard rumors from other janitors, ones who'd been there longer. They said S4 went down into the earth, level after level, like an inverted skyscraper. The night everything changed, September 3rd, 2019, I was assigned to clean a section of Hangar 18 I'd never been to before, Sub-Basement 2, they called it. My supervisor Janet handed me the assignment herself, which was unusual. She typically just posted our schedules. Marcus, she said, not quite meeting my eyes. You're one of our most reliable employees. Never asked questions. Never caused problems. Tonight I need someone I can trust to clean Lab 7 and Hangar 18 Sub-Basement 2. Can I trust you? I should have said no. Every instinct in my body was screaming that this was wrong, that reliable janitors don't suddenly get special assignments in classified areas. But I needed this job. My daughter was starting college next year, and Area 51 paid 3 times what any other janitorial position offered. Yes, ma'am, I said. Janet handed me a different keycard, red instead of the standard white. This expires at 6 a.m. Clean Lab 7. Nothing else. Don't wander. Don't explore. And Marcus, she finally looked me in the eye. If you see Dr. Chen down there, don't speak to her. She's going through a difficult time. The elevator to Sub-Basement 2 required the red keycard, and a code Janet had written on my hand in pen. She made me memorize it, then immediately washed it off. The descent took longer than it should have for 2 floors. When the doors opened, I stepped into a hallway that belonged in a science fiction movie. The walls were some kind of metal I'd never seen before, seamless and slightly warm to the touch. The air smelled different. Not bad, just different. Like ozone and something else. Something that made my sinuses tingle. Lab 7 was at the end of the corridor, past 6 other sealed doors. Each had a small window, but they were frosted, showing only hints of movement and light within. I could hear sounds and mechanical humming, occasional voices speaking in languages I didn't recognize, and something else, a rhythmic pulsing that seemed to come from the walls themselves. I badged into Lab 7 and nearly dropped my mop bucket. The room was enormous, much larger than should have been possible given the building's dimensions above ground. The ceiling stretched up at least 3 stories, and the far wall was entirely glass, looking into what appeared to be a massive hangar. But it wasn't what was in the hangar that made my hands shake as I started mopping. It was what was on the desk right in front of me. Files. Hundreds of them, marked with classifications I'd never seen before. Not just top secret but designations like Cosmic Clearance Only, and Majestic Eyes Only, and Project Blue Book Ultra. Someone had been going through them frantically. Papers were scattered everywhere, some with coffee stains, others with handwritten notes in multiple languages. I tried to follow protocol. I tried to just clean around them, to not look, to not read. But when you see a document titled, First Contact Protocol, established 1,947 inches sitting right there, your eyes can't help but scan a few lines. The document was a treaty, an actual treaty between the United States government and something called the Zeta Reticulum Collective. The terms were simple and horrifying. In exchange for gradual technological advancement and protection from hostile non-terrestrial entities, the United States agrees to provide periodic genetic samples from willing and unwilling civilian populations, allow establishment of underground research facilities in mutually agreed locations, deny and discourage public awareness of non-terrestrial intelligence, cooperate in the hybrid program as outlined in Appendix J. There was more, so much more. But that's when I heard the door open behind me. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the doorway, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. Asian woman, maybe 45, wearing a lab coat covered in stains I didn't want to identify. Her eyes were red-rimmed, either from crying or exhaustion, probably both. "You're not supposed to be here," she said, but there was no authority in her voice, just resignation. "I'm the janitor," I managed to say, holding up my mop like it was some kind of credential. "Janet sent me to clean Lab 7. Dr. Chen laughed, but it was bitter, broken. "Clean, right. Like we can clean any of this up." She walked past me to the desk, gathering files seemingly at random. "Do you know what's happening in 2 weeks?" I knew about the Storm Area 51 event. Of course, everyone did. Over 2 million people had signed up on Facebook to raid the base to see them aliens. It had become a massive joke, spawning memes and merchandise. The military had issued warnings, the local county had declared a state of emergency, and everyone was preparing for a disaster when thousands of people showed up in the desert. "The Facebook thing?" I asked. "The perfect distraction," Dr. Chen said. She turned to look at me, really look at me, and made a decision. "What's your name?" "Marcus Thompson." "Marcus, in about 30 seconds, security is going to realize I've disabled the cameras in this section. They'll come, they'll escort me out, and you'll never see me again. But someone needs to know the truth. Someone outside the program." She grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "S4, level -7. It's all real, Marcus. Bob Lazar, he only saw a fraction of it. The craft, the beings, the agreements, 40 years of lies, and it's all about to escalate." The door burst open. 3 guards in tactical gear entered, weapons not quite pointed at us but ready. Dr. Chen, the lead guard, said calmly, "You need to come with us." She let go of my arm but pressed something into my hand. Her key card. The guards either didn't notice or didn't care. As they escorted her out, she called back, "Check the basement, Marcus. The real basement. And remember, they're not coming. They're already here." The guards left me standing there, surrounded by classified documents, holding a key card I shouldn't have, knowing things I shouldn't know. I finished cleaning Lab 7, my hands moving on autopilot while my mind raced. When I was done, I should have returned the red keycard to Janet, clocked out, and gone home. Instead, I went looking for S4. Part 2. The Storm Before the Storm. Getting to S4 from Area 51 proper wasn't supposed to be possible for someone like me. The facilities were connected by underground tunnels. Yes, but those required clearances I didn't have. What I did have was Dr. Chen's keycard and 7 years of knowledge about the base's service tunnels. You see, even secret underground facilities need plumbing. It took me 3 hours to navigate the service tunnels. 3 hours of crawling through spaces barely wide enough for my shoulders, following pipes labeled with cryptic alphanumeric codes, hoping I was heading in the right direction. The temperature dropped as I went deeper, and several times I had to stop when I heard voices or footsteps above or below me. I finally emerged through a maintenance hatch into what looked like a standard utility room. Boilers, water heaters, electrical panels, normal stuff except for the sign on the door, S4 Level -2 Maintenance, authorized personnel only. Level -2. That meant I was already 2 floors underground, and according to Dr. Chen, I needed to reach level -7. I cracked open the door and peered into a hallway that was distinctly different from Area 51's aesthetic, where the main base was all military efficiency. On concrete, steel, harsh lighting, S4 looked almost organic. The walls curved seamlessly into the ceiling, made from some material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The air was different too, pressurized maybe, making my ears pop. Dr. Chen's keycard worked on the elevator, which was a relief and terrifying at the same time. It meant she had access to places someone of her apparent position shouldn't. The elevator panel showed levels from +1 to -9, with several buttons covered by locked plastic shields. Level -7 wasn't covered, but when I pressed it, the elevator asked for biometric confirmation. I almost gave up then, but something made me try Dr. Chen's card again. This time noticing a small sensor I'd missed before. The card had a chip, but also something else, a thin layer of something organic looking on one corner. I pressed it to the sensor. Biometric confirmed. Welcome, Dr. Chen, a synthetic voice said, and the elevator began to descend. The descent to level -7 took almost 2 full minutes. I did the math. We were going down at least a quarter mile below the desert floor. The pressure change was significant enough that the elevator had to pause twice to equalize. When the doors finally opened, I stepped into a place that shouldn't exist. The first thing I noticed was the gravity felt wrong, not dramatically different, but enough that my first step nearly sent me stumbling. The hallway stretching before me was massive, nice, at least 30 feet high and twice as wide. The walls were lined with observation windows, each looking into different chambers or laboratories. But the light was wrong. Everything was bathed in a soft blue-white glow that didn't seem to come from any specific source. I walked past the first window and saw what looked like a medical examination room. Standard equipment, the examination table, monitoring devices, surgical tools. Except the table was designed for something that wasn't human. Too long, with restraints in places that didn't match human anatomy. The second window showed a laboratory where technicians in full hazmat suits were examining something under intense lights. I couldn't make out details, but whatever was on that table was definitely organic and definitely not from Earth. It pulsed with bioluminescence, patterns of light flowing across what might have been skin or scales or something in between. The third window stopped me cold. It was a conference room. A normal-looking conference room with a long table, chairs, and a projection screen. Except 3 of the beings sitting at the table weren't human. They were the Greys exactly as pop culture depicted them. About 4 feet tall, oversized heads, large black eyes, but they weren't wearing spacesuits or any exotic clothing. They wore business attire. One had a tie. Another was taking notes on what looked like an iPad. Across from them sat 2 humans in military uniforms, one Air Force general, whose name tag read Morrison, and another in a suit with no identification. They were having a discussion, casual as any business meeting. I couldn't hear through the soundproof glass, but their body language suggested negotiation, not first contact. This wasn't a historic meeting. This was routine. I don't know how long I stood there watching, but eventually, one of the Greys turned its head and looked directly at me, not at the window, at me. Through what I'd assumed was one-way glass, it tilted its head slightly, like it was curious, then turned back to the meeting. I ran. Not back to the elevator. That would trap me. I ran deeper into level -7, looking for another way out. Looking for answers. Looking for anything that made sense. The corridor branched into multiple sections, each labeled with project names that ranged from mundane to terrifying: Project Serpo, Project Looking Glass, Project Nightmare Hall. I turned a corner and nearly collided with someone coming the other way. Human, thankfully, young man in a lab coat carrying a tablet. He looked at me, confused. "You're not supposed to be in this section," he said, but without alarm. People down here were apparently used to seeing strangers. "New rotation?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. He smiled sympathetically. "First time at -7? It's overwhelming, I know. The gravity takes some getting used to, Dever. It's artificially reduced to accommodate our partners. You heading to the hangar?" "Partners." He said it so casually. "Yes," I managed. "Follow me. First-timers always get lost down here. The layout doesn't follow Euclidean geometry. Something about making it more comfortable for them." He started walking, and I followed, trying to process what he'd just said. Non-Euclidean geometry. In a building. Underground. We walked for what felt like forever but was probably only 5 minutes. Several times I could have sworn we walked down the same corridor from different directions, but my guide seemed to know exactly where he was going. Finally, we reached a massive door marked Hangar 7-1 Octave Research. "Here you go," he said cheerfully. "Word of advice: don't stare at the craft too long. The propulsion system is based on consciousness-assisted technology. If you focus on it too intensely, it interprets that as an activation command. Learned that the hard way my first weekend. Ended up hovering 3 feet off the ground for an hour." He walked away, leaving me standing before the door. I used Dr. Chen's card. The door opened. The hangar was impossible. It couldn't physically exist in the space available, yet there it was, a chamber, the size of multiple football fields, with a ceiling that seemed to stretch up forever, disappearing into darkness. And floating in the center, suspended by no visible means, were 3 craft. They were exactly what you'd expect. DX classic flying saucer design, maybe 30 feet in diameter, seamless metallic surface that seemed to shift between silver and chrome, and something that hurt to look at directly. No visible propulsion, no windows, no doors. They simply hung there, rotating slowly, silently. But the craft weren't what made me finally understand the magnitude of what I'd stumbled into. It was the work being done around them. Dozens of technicians moved about the hangar, some human, some not. The Greys worked alongside humans like it was perfectly normal, but there were others too, beings I had no reference point for. Tall, thin creatures with elongated limbs and faces that seemed to shift when you weren't looking directly at them. Shorter, more robust beings with scaled skin, and too many eyes, and moving between them all. Coordinating, translating, facilitating, were humans in various uniforms: Air Force, Navy, NASA, and agencies whose insignias I didn't recognize. This wasn't a prison for crashed alien craft. This wasn't a reverse engineering project. This was a joint operation. Impressive, isn't it? I spun around to find General Morrison standing behind me, the same Morrison I'd seen in the conference room. Up close, he looked tired, worn down by decades of carrying impossible secrets. "You're Marcus Thompson," he said. It wasn't a question. "Dr. Chen's janitor. We've been watching you since you entered S4. He gestured to the hangar. "What do you think you're looking at?" I couldn't speak. Couldn't move. Morrison sighed. "You're looking at the future, Mr. Thompson. Or perhaps the present, depending on your perspective. This has been going on since 1947, when we first made contact. Or rather, when they made contact with us." He walked to the railing overlooking the hangar. Roswell wasn't a crash. It was an invitation. A test to see how we'd react. We failed, of course. Covered it up. Denied everything. But they expected that. Humanity wasn't ready then. Ready for what? I finally found my voice. "Integration," Morrison said simply. "The galaxy is hell. The universe is teeming with intelligent life. Earth has been a protected preserve for thousands of years, isolated while we developed. But that protection is ending. The question isn't whether we'll join the galactic community, but how, peacefully, gradually, with assistance, or violently, suddenly, without preparation. He turned to look at me. Every major technological advancement since 1947 has been guided: transistors, integrated circuits, fiber optics, the internet, all breadcrumbs leading us toward the minimum technological threshold for contact. But we're running out of time. Climate change, nuclear proliferation, artificial intelligence, we're approaching several extinction-level filters simultaneously. They're trying to help us through, but only if we can handle the truth. The Storm Area 51 event, I said, pieces clicking together. Morrison nodded. 2 million people joke about raiding this base to see them aliens. It's perfect. While the world watches the circus above, we're moving the entire operation. This facility has been compromised, not by spies or leaks but by time. Too many people know, too many questions. So we're relocating. The craft, the beings, the research, it's all being moved. Where? Does it matter? Underground? Underwater? Antarctica? The moon? We have bases you couldn't imagine. The infrastructure has been building for decades. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Why not just— I didn't finish the sentence, but we both knew what I meant. Why not just make me disappear? Morrison smiled sadly. Because Dr. Chen was right about one thing. We need witnesses, people outside the program who know the truth. Not everyone agrees with the secrecy. Some of us believe humanity is ready, that the gradual disclosure plan is too slow. Dr. Chen was one of them. She's been strategically leaking information for years, choosing people like you. Normal, credible, but ultimately dismissible if necessary. So I'm what, a controlled leak? You're an insurance policy, Morrison corrected. If official disclosure goes wrong, if the government tries to spin it or hide crucial information, people like you will be out there with the truth. Unbelievable truth, certainly, but truth nonetheless. He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope, handing it to me. This contains 2 things. First, instructions on how to leave this facility safely and return to your normal life. Second, a device. Don't open it here. Wait until you're home, alone, at night. You'll understand when you see it. What about Dr. Chen? Dr. Chen is safe. Relocated, given a new identity. Officially, she never existed. Unofficially, she's continuing her work elsewhere. He checked his watch. You need to leave. In 6 hours, this level won't exist anymore. Thermite charges throughout the structure. It'll look like a minor seismic event on the surface. He turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Mr. Thompson, that thing about nobody believing the truth when it sounds crazy, that's not entirely accurate. The right people will believe. The ones who need to know will find you. Be ready. Part 3. The Storm. I followed Morrison's instructions exactly. The route out was different from how I'd entered Moshta service elevator that went directly to a parking garage I didn't know existed. My car was there. Keys in the ignition, like they'd moved it for me. The drive home was surreal. The sunrise looked the same. The desert looked the same, but nothing was the same. At home, I sat at my kitchen table and opened Morrison's envelope. Inside was indeed a device, about the size of a smartphone, but thinner, made of something that felt like glass, but was flexible like plastic. It was transparent, until I touched it. Then it came alive with light. No buttons, no obvious interface, just response to thought. I'm not going to pretend I understood how it worked, but the basic function was clear. It was a receiver and translator. When I held it up to the night sky, it showed me things. Ships in orbit, hidden by cloaking technology. Signals bouncing between Earth and locations throughout the solar system. Messages in languages that automatically translated in my mind. Most of the messages were mundane status reports, navigation data, the equivalent of alien small talk, but some were significant. References to the harvest, the transition, and repeatedly, Phase 2. September 20th, 2019. Arrived, the day of the Storm Area 51 event. The media reported about 150 people showed up at the gates. A few thousand attended the music festivals in nearby towns. A joke, a meme, a nothing burger. But the device showed me the truth. While the world watched the handful of Naruto runners at the main gate, massive operations were underway. Craft after craft left the underground hangars, not just from Area 51, but from locations worldwide, the biggest relocation in human history, and nobody noticed. Well, almost nobody. Jake Morrison, no relation to the general, was a YouTuber who'd driven out from California to cover the event. He ran a channel about conspiracy theories, UFOs, the usual stuff. He'd brought a drone, planning to get aerial footage of the crowds, but Jake was smarter than most. While everyone focused on the main gate, he drove out to the mountains overlooking S4. What happened to Jake became internet legend, though most people think it was a hoax. His drone footage, what little survived, showed something rising from the mountain. Not a craft, but a structure, a massive antenna, or transmitter of some kind. It extended maybe 300 feet into the air, glowed for exactly 17 seconds, then retracted. Jake himself was found unconscious 2 days later in his car, 50 miles away. He claimed to have no memory of how he got there. But I knew, because the device showed me. Jake had been taken, not abducted in the traditional sense. Invited. His drone had captured something it shouldn't have, triggered automated systems, but instead of simply wiping his memory and dumping him, they'd done something else. They'd shown him things. The same things Dr. Chen had seen. The same truth Morrison had shared with me. But human minds aren't designed to process that much reality at once. Jake's consciousness had shut down, gone into protective mode. When he started posting again, weeks later, his content had changed. No more wild speculation or connecting random dots. His theories were specific, detailed, accurate. He knew things he couldn't possibly know, and slowly, carefully, he began sharing them. I reached out to him through encrypted channels. We met at a diner in Las Vegas, both of us paranoid, both of us carrying devices we didn't fully understand. "You were at S4, he said. It wasn't a question. "You were shown the truth," I replied. We compared notes. His device was different from mine, more advanced, interactive. It didn't just receive, it could transmit. He'd been trying to use it to communicate with them to understand the plan. "Phase 2, he said, sliding a notebook across the table. "I've been tracking patterns, timeframes. Whatever they're planning, it centers around 2025. His notebook was filled with data points, astronomical alignments, electromagnetic anomalies, population dynamics, technological development curves. It painted a picture of convergence, everything leading to a specific window of time. "They're not invading," Jake explained. "They're emerging. The infrastructure is already here, has been for decades. Shadow organizations, black projects, people in positions of power who know the truth. When Phase 2 begins, it won't be ships landing on the White House lawn. It'll be a coordinated revelation, every major government simultaneously announcing contact. The evidence will be overwhelming, undeniable. People will panic," I said. "Some will. But think about how we've been prepared. Decades of movies, TV shows, books about aliens, surveys showing most people believe life exists elsewhere. The younger generation treats the idea of aliens as obvious, not shocking. We've been culturally inoculated." He was right. Looking back, the pattern was obvious. The gradual shift from aliens as monsters to aliens as neighbors. The normalization of the idea that we're not alone. "But there's resistance," Jake continued. "Not everyone in the program agrees with disclosure. Some think humanity should remain isolated, that contact will destroy our culture, our religions, our sense of identity. They're the ones who've been sabotaging disclosure attempts for years." Dr. Chen mentioned something about hostile non-terrestrial entities. I remembered. The treaty mentioned protection. Jake's expression darkened. "Yeah, that's the part that keeps me up at night. We're not just being welcomed into a peaceful galactic federation. There's something else out there, something they're protecting us from, or preparing us for." We met regularly after that, building a network. Others found us, former military personnel with strange stories, scientists who'd worked on black projects, normal people who'd seen things they couldn't explain. The device helped us identify each other. It reacted to others who'd been touched by the truth. Dr. Chen reached out 6 months after S4 was destroyed. She was using a new identity, working at a university, teaching physics while secretly preparing selected students for what was coming. She confirmed our suspicions about Phase 2, but added crucial details. The beings we call Greys, they're not the real players, she explained over encrypted video chat. They're workers, possibly even artificial constructs. The real civilization behind this is ancient, multidimensional. They exist partially in our reality, partially in others. The Greys are their interface with our three-dimensional space. Why Earth? I asked. Why humans? Genetic diversity, she answered. Consciousness potential. We're not special because we're advanced. We're special because we're adaptable. Our DNA, our neural structure, our capacity for both logic and intuition, it's rare in the galaxy. We're valuable, but not as slaves or subjects. As partners, contributors to something larger. The hybrid program, I said, remembering the treaty I'd read. Chen nodded. Not what you think. Not breeding programs or genetic experiments. Consciousness merging. Voluntary integration of human and non-human awareness. Creating beings who can think in ways neither species can alone. It sounded insane, but I'd seen enough to know insane was relative. Part 4. The Revelation. By 2021, the signs were everywhere if you knew how to look. Pentagon UFO disclosures, congressional hearings, mainstream media coverage of phenomena that would have been ridiculed years before. The tide was turning, exactly as planned. But something else was happening. The devices we carried began showing us disturbing patterns. Ships that didn't match the familiar signatures, messages in languages the translation system couldn't parse, and repeatedly, warnings from our partners about an approaching threat. Jake figured it out first. They're accelerating the timeline, he told me during one of our meetings. Phase 2 was supposed to begin in 2025, but something's forcing their hand. Something's coming. The something revealed itself on March 15, 2023, though only those with devices saw it happen. A massive object entered our solar system, not through normal space but through what the messages called a dimensional fold. It was biological, the size of Manhattan, and it was scanning. The response was immediate. Every hidden base on Earth went to full alert. Craft we'd never seen before emerged from the oceans, from underground, from dimensional pockets, not dozens or hundreds, but thousands. Earth's secret defense network, built over 70 years of cooperation, activated for the first time. The biological entity, Ipiwa. We never learned its proper name, but the translations called it a harvester, sent out probes, smaller biological ships that entered Earth's atmosphere, scanning population centers, looking for something. One probe came to Las Vegas. I watched it through the device, a thing like a jellyfish made of dark matter and twisted space, floating invisibly over the strip. It paused above certain individuals, scanning them, then moved on. It stopped above me. The scan felt like ice in my veins, like something reading not just my body but my entire existence, past, present, and probable futures. The device in my hand grew hot, and suddenly I could hear it, the harvester, speaking directly into my consciousness. Contaminated, it said. Species has been claimed, protected, treaty violation to proceed. It moved on, and within hours, all the probes withdrew. The harvester left our solar system the same way it came, folding space and disappearing. But the damage was done. The secret was blown wide open, at least to those monitoring unusual activity. Governments scrambled. Within a week, classified briefings were happening at the highest levels worldwide. The decision was made. Controlled disclosure had to begin immediately. If harvesters were real, if Earth was truly under some kind of protection, humanity needed to know. But how do you tell 7 billion people that everything they believed about their place in the universe is wrong? You start small. You leak more Pentagon videos. You have respected scientists suddenly discover evidence of non-human technology. You let former officials tell their stories without persecution. You normalize the impossible until it becomes inevitable. By 2024, polls showed 80% of people believed intelligent alien life existed. 60% believed governments were hiding evidence of contact. The cultural ground was prepared. Then came the announcement. December 31st, 2024. Every major world leader, in coordinated speeches, revealed the truth. Not all of it. Not would have been too much. But enough. Contact had been established. We were not alone. Cooperation had been ongoing. And most importantly, We were being invited to join a larger community, but only if we could unify as a species. The reaction was strange. Some rioted, some celebrated, some refused to believe even with evidence presented, but most seemed relieved. Finally, an answer to the Fermi paradox. Finally, confirmation of what they'd always suspected. Finally, a reason to stop fighting among ourselves. Part 5. The Choice. Which brings us to now, 2025. Phase 2. I'm still a janitor, technically, but now I clean different facilities. Official ones. The embassy buildings where human and non-human representatives meet. The integration centers where volunteers undergo consciousness expansion. The schools where children learn galactic history alongside Earth history. Jake runs a documentation project, recording testimonies from contactees and experiencers. Dr. Chen, no longer in hiding, leads a team preparing humanity's contribution to galactic science. Apparently, our music and art are considered exceptionally valuable. General Morrison retired, but not before overseeing the public revelation of the recovered craft. Not just American craft, every nation had some. The technology is being released gradually, solving energy crises, medical limitations, environmental destruction, but always with supervision, always with limits. We're children playing with tools we don't fully understand. The Greys walk among us now, openly, though they prefer to work at night when their large eyes are more comfortable. The tall beings, we learned they're called mantids, serve as counselors and philosophers. Other species visit, trade, share. Earth has become a cosmic crossroads. But the harvesters haven't returned. Yet. The protection we enjoy comes with a price. We have to prove we're worth protecting. We have to contribute something unique to the galactic community. We have to evolve, not just technologically but consciously. We have to become more than we were. The device I carry has evolved too. Now it doesn't just receive and translate, it connects. I can feel the network of consciousness spreading across Earth. Humans and non-humans linked in ways we never imagined possible. It's beautiful and terrifying. Some refuse to participate. There are resistance movements, those who want humanity to remain pure, isolated. They don't understand that isolation was never natural and endured. It was imposed, a protective quarantine while we matured. Now the quarantine is lifting, and we have to choose, evolve or extinction. The Vatican announced that alien life doesn't contradict faith, that creation is larger than we imagined. Scientists work alongside beings who've solved questions we hadn't even thought to ask. Children grow up thinking intergalactic field trips are normal. But late at night, when I use the device to scan deep space, I can see them. Harvesters, waiting at the edge of our protected zone, watching, testing. If we fail, if we prove we're not worthy of protection, they'll return, and next time, no treaty will stop them. Part 6. The Underground Network. Let me tell you about what I discovered in the months following the announcement. The integration centers they show on the news, the peaceful diplomatic meetings, the scientific exchanges, that's all real, but it's only the surface. There's an entire underground network that the public doesn't know about, and I stumbled into it by accident. It started when I was assigned to clean a facility in New Mexico, not far from the old Dulce base that conspiracy theorists had talked about for years. Turns out, they were right about Dulce, just wrong about the details. It wasn't a prison for human experiments. It was a rehabilitation center for humans who'd been damaged by unauthorized contact. You see, not all aliens follow the treaties. Just like humans, they have criminals, rogue elements, individuals who don't respect the rules, and sometimes, those rogues would abduct people, experiment on them, or worse. The official program would then have to clean up the mess, rescue the victims, repair the damage, wipe the memories if necessary. I met Maria Gonzalez there. She'd been taken in 1987 by what she described as insects made of light. For 3 days, she existed in a state between dimensions, her consciousness scattered across multiple realities. The official program found her when she reappeared in her bedroom, aged 10 years in those 3 days, speaking in mathematical equations instead of words. It took them 15 years to mostly fix her. She could function normally now, but sometimes when the light hit just right, you could see through her Maichi, literally see through her, like she wasn't entirely solid. They saved me, she told me one night, as I cleaned the common room where recovered abductees gathered. Not the government. Them the Greys. They went into whatever dimension those things had taken me to and pulled me back out, piece by piece, thought by thought. Maria introduced me to others. Thomas, a truck driver who'd lost 6 hours on a highway in Montana and came back with implants that transmitted his thoughts to anyone within 50 feet. Sarah, a teacher who'd been replaced by something that looked like her but wasn't, while the real her was kept in a suspended state for 2 years. Miguel, a farmer who'd watched his cattle get turned inside out by beings that existed in 4 spatial dimensions instead of 3. Each had been rescued by the official program. Each had been rehabilitated, given new identities if needed, compensated financially, and offered a choice: forget everything or join the network. Most chose to forget. But some, like Maria, chose to remember and work to prevent others from suffering the same fate. The universe isn't Star Trek, Maria explained. It's more like the Old West. There's law, but it only reaches so far. Beyond that, it's frontier. And Earth? We're a frontier town that just got connected to the railroad. Most travelers are decent, but some are predators. The facility at Dulce went deep underground. Level -12 was the deepest I was allowed to clean. Each level down was dedicated to different aspects of the rehabilitation program. Level -3 was medical, treating physical trauma from unauthorized experiments. Level -5 was psychological, helping minds cope with experiences human psychology wasn't equipped to handle. Level -7 was something they called consciousness reconstruction, literally rebuilding someone's sense of self after it had been shattered by contact with incomprehensible entities. But levels -10 through 12 were different. Those weren't for rehabilitation, they were for containment. Some humans, when exposed to certain types of alien consciousness, changed in ways that couldn't be reversed. They became something between human and other, capable of things that violated physics as we understood it. These people couldn't be released back into society, but they couldn't be imprisoned either. They could phase through walls, exist in multiple locations simultaneously, or influence reality with their thoughts. So they were kept in specially designed chambers that existed partially outside our dimension. Voluntary prisoners who understood that their very existence could unravel local space-time if they weren't careful. I met one of them once. Her name had been Jennifer, but she insisted that names were meaningless now. She appeared to be a normal 30-something woman until you realized she was having conversations with versions of herself from parallel timelines, all at once, out loud. "I'm not crazy," she told me. Or maybe told herself. It was hard to tell. "I can see all the branches, all the possibilities. In one timeline, you never took this job. In another, you're the one in this cell. In a third, Earth was never protected. And we're all enslaved. I see them all. Equally real. Equally now." She scared me more than any Grey or Mantid ever did, because she used to be completely human. The change wasn't forced on her, whereas her consciousness had simply expanded too fast, seen too much, understood more than our neural architecture could process. She was evolution gone wrong, or maybe gone right but too soon. Part 7, The Resistance War. Not everyone accepted the new reality. By mid-2025, organized resistance movements had formed worldwide. They called themselves Human First, Earth Pure, the Terrestrial Guard, different names, same ideology. They believed contact was an invasion, integration was surrender, and anyone who cooperated was a traitor to the species. At first they were dismissed as fringe groups, but then they started getting sophisticated. They had weapons that could disrupt alien technology, information about facility locations that should have been classified, and most disturbingly, they had inside help. The first major incident happened in London. An integration center where humans and Greys worked together on medical technology was bombed, not with conventional explosives, but with something that created a localized space-time distortion. 17 beings died, 12 humans, 5 Greys. It was the first time humans had deliberately killed our visitors. The response from the galactic community was swift and terrifying. Every craft in Earth orbit powered up their weapons. For 12 hours we were one decision away from the protection being withdrawn. General Morrison, despite being retired, was called back to negotiate. He later told me it was the closest humanity had come to extinction since the Cuban Missile Crisis. The resistance didn't care. They escalated. In Tokyo, they released a biological weapon designed to target the specific silicon-based biology of one of the visiting species. In Moscow, they hacked into the consciousness network and broadcast traumatic images directly into the minds of anyone with neural interfaces. In New York, they somehow opened a dimensional rift that let through things that shouldn't exist in our reality, geometric shapes that caused seizures just by being observed, sounds that made people forget their own names. I was in Phoenix when the resistance tried their boldest move. They'd stolen one of the recovered craft from the 1950s, one that had been reverse-engineered enough for human operation. Their plan was simple: take the craft up and attack the orbital stations, make it look like humanity was rejecting contact violently. I watched from the ground as the craft rose into the sky, a silver disk moving with impossible grace. It made it about 5 miles up before something grabbed it. Not physically miter. Something reached out from another dimension and simply stopped it. The craft hung there for 30 seconds, then gently descended back to the ground. When authorities reached the craft, the would-be pilots were unconscious but unharmed. They woke up 3 days later with no memory of their names, their cause, or why they'd tried to start an interstellar war. They'd been selectively mind-wiped, precision erasure of only the thoughts and memories that drove them to violence. That's when humanity learned something important. Our partners were being patient with us, but their patience had limits. They could have destroyed us at any moment. They could alter our minds, our reality, our very existence. The only reason they didn't was because they believed we could choose to be better. Not everyone saw it that way. Dr. Marcus Webb, a former colleague of Dr. Chen, led the intellectual arm of the resistance. He published papers arguing that humanity was being domesticated, that we were trading our independence for technological treats, that in a few generations, nothing recognizably human would remain. "Look at them," he said in one underground broadcast. "Humans with alien consciousness interfaces, children being taught to think in 11 dimensions, our DNA being upgraded with alien sequences. This isn't evolution, it's replacement. We're being bred out of existence, and we're applauding while it happens." He wasn't entirely wrong. Humanity was changing, rapidly and fundamentally, but the alternative is isolation, stagnation, eventual extinction from our own limitations, seemed worse to most. The resistance found allies in unexpected places. Some military officials who'd been part of the original secret programs felt betrayed by disclosure. Religious extremists saw the aliens as demons or false prophets. Corporate leaders realized that free energy and matter replication would destroy their power base. But their most dangerous allies weren't human at all. Part 8. The Dark Visitors. Remember I mentioned that not all aliens follow the treaties? Well, some actively oppose them. They're called different names by different species, but the translation usually comes out as devourers or void seekers. They believe consciousness is a mistake, that the universe should return to pristine unconsciousness, that all thinking beings are a cancer on reality. These beings made contact with Earth's resistance movements. Not openly they couldn't enter our protected space without triggering defensive systems, but they could send messages, instructions, technologies. I learned about this through Jake, who'd been monitoring unusual signals with his upgraded device. He detected transmissions coming from outside our solar system, but targeted with surgical precision at resistance cells. "They're being coached," he told me, showing me the data. "Someone's teaching them how to fight beings millions of years more advanced, how to disrupt consciousness networks, how to create dimensional weapons, how to poison the integration process." The Greys were aware of it too. I was cleaning at an embassy building one night. When I overheard, they knew I was there, they just didn't care. A conversation between a Grey ambassador and human officials. "The Void Seekers have marked Earth," the Grey said in that strange, toneless voice they use for verbal communication. "Your resistance has become their proxy. If they succeed in disrupting integration, your protection ends. Without protection, the harvesters return. After the harvesters, the Void Seekers themselves." "What do they want?" the human official asked. "The end of thought. The silence of space. The universe as it was before consciousness emerged. Pure unconscious, perfect in its emptiness." It was insane, but apparently, it was a legitimate philosophical position in galactic politics. Some beings really believed the universe was better without conscious observers, and they were ancient, powerful, and patient. The resistance didn't know they were being used. They thought they were fighting for human freedom. They didn't realize their victory would mean the extinction of not just humanity but all consciousness on Earth. This is where my story takes a dark turn. I was recruited, not by the government or the aliens, but by something Dr. Chen had set up years before mine as a hidden network of humans who'd been exposed to the truth early. We called ourselves bridges, because we existed between worlds, human enough to understand our species, exposed enough to understand the bigger picture. Our job was to infiltrate the resistance, identify those being directly influenced by void seekers and neutralize them. Not kill, fear, that would make martyrs. Instead, we would expose them to controlled consciousness expansion, show them the real stakes, make them understand what they were really fighting for. It didn't always work. Some minds broke when faced with the full truth. Others refused to believe, even with evidence flooding their consciousness. But some, enough, switched sides when they realized they'd been pawns in a game that ended with the death of all thought. I personally turned 3 resistance leaders. The first was a former Marine colonel, who'd lost friends in the integration center bombing. I showed him, through the device, what the void seekers had done to other worlds, planets stripped not just of life, but of the very concept of life, realities where thought had never emerged, and never would. The second was a priest who believed the aliens were testing humanity's faith. I introduced him to a manted philosopher who showed him that consciousness, in all its forms, was the closest thing to the divine the universe had produced. The priest wept when he realized he'd been fighting against the very thing he worshipped. The third was my daughter. Part 9. Personal Apocalypse. I hadn't seen Emma in 2 years. After the announcement, after my role in the integration became known, she'd cut me off, said I was a traitor to humanity, that I'd sold out our species for alien technology and empty promises. She'd joined the resistance while at college, recruited by a charismatic professor who taught that human consciousness was unique and sacred, that alien influence would dilute and destroy it. She was brilliant, angry, and absolutely convinced she was saving humanity. I tracked her down to a resistance cell in Seattle. They were planning something big, a simultaneous attack on 12 integration centers worldwide, using dimensional bombs that would create permanent rifts in space-time. The plan had void seeker fingerprints all over it. I couldn't approach her directly. Instead, I arranged to be assigned as maintenance at the building where her cell met. For 3 weeks I cleaned their offices, emptied their trash, remained invisible. I listened to their plans, their justifications, their absolute certainty that they were heroes. Then one night, Emma stayed late, working on calculations for the dimensional bombs. She was alone when I finally revealed myself. "Hello, sweetheart." She pulled a gun, an actual projectile weapon, not energy-based. The resistance had learned that old technology was harder for aliens to counter. "You're not my father," she said. "My father wouldn't betray his species." "I'm trying to save it," I replied, holding up my hands. "Emma, you don't understand what you're really doing. Who's really behind this?" "I understand perfectly. We're fighting the invasion you're too brainwashed to see." That's when I made the choice that haunts me. I activated my device, not the receiving function, but the transmitting one. I pushed into her mind, not thoughts or arguments, but pure experience. Everything I'd seen, everything I knew, everything about the void seekers and their plans. It's one thing to tell someone the truth. It's another to make them experience it directly, to feel the cold emptiness of a universe without thought, to understand viscerally that their resistance was hastening the extinction they thought they were preventing. Emma screamed. Her gun fell. She collapsed, convulsing as her brain tried to process information that should have taken years to properly integrate. I held her as she seized, whispering apologies, begging forgiveness. When she finally stilled, her eyes were different, older, haunted. She'd seen what I'd seen, knew what I knew. "They lied to us," she whispered. "The professor, the resistance leaders, or, no, they believed it. They really believed they were saving us." "The best lies are the ones the liars believe," I said. She helped us stop the attack, provided inside information that let authorities intervene hours before the bombs were to be placed. Dozens of lives saved, a potential disaster averted. But the cost. Emma wasn't the same after that. The forced consciousness expansion had changed her, like it had changed Jennifer in the containment facility. Not as dramatically. She could still function, still appeared normal, but sometimes she would stop mid-sentence, staring at something only she could see. She said she could feel the void seekers sometimes, pressing against the edges of our protected space, whispering promises of peaceful oblivion. She works with us now, the bridges, using her resistance connections to identify and turn others, but she hasn't forgiven me for what I did. How could she? I violated her mind to save her life, forced evolution on her to prevent extinction. You're just like them, she told me once. The Greys, the integration forces. You think you know better, so you change us without consent. How does that make you different from the void seekers? I didn't have an answer. Still don't. Part 10. The Chinese Incident. October 2025. The Chinese government had been more secretive about their integration efforts than other nations. While the US and Europe had public integration centers, China built theirs underground, accessible only to party elite and selected scientists. They wanted the advantages of contact without the social disruption. It was a mistake. The secrecy created an information vacuum that the resistance filled with propaganda. Most Chinese citizens believed their government had surrendered to alien occupation. Protests turned to riots, turned to revolution. But this wasn't just civil unrest. The dimensional weapons the resistance had developed were being mass-produced in hidden factories. The first sign of trouble was when Beijing's integration center went dark. All communication ceased. Greys and humans inside just stopped responding. Then the building itself began to change. Witnesses described it as folding in on itself, becoming something that hurt to look at directly. Within hours the effect spread, a bubble of wrongness expanding from the center, reality inside becoming increasingly unstable. People caught in it reported seeing multiple versions of themselves, past and future overlapping with present. Some aged decades in minutes. Others reversed to childhood. A few simply ceased, not dying but unbecoming, erased from existence so thoroughly that only those outside the bubble remembered they'd ever lived. The international response was immediate but complicated. This was Chinese sovereign territory, but the threat was global. If the reality distortion continued expanding, it would consume Earth within days. I was part of the emergency team sent in, not as a janitor but as a bridge, someone who could interface between human and alien response teams. The flight to Beijing was surreal, watching through the windows as we approached the distortion zone, seeing the city twist into impossible geometries. We set up a perimeter 20 miles from the expanding edge. Greys, mantids, and a dozen other species worked alongside human scientists and military personnel. The cooperation was perfect. No ego or nationalism, just beings trying to prevent reality from unraveling. The mantids identified the cause first. The resistance hadn't just used dimensional bombs, they'd combined them with void seeker technology, creating what they called a consciousness sink. It was draining thought from reality itself, creating a growing bubble of space where consciousness couldn't exist. If it reaches critical mass, a mantid explained through translated thoughts, it becomes self-sustaining, a permanent dead zone in reality. Other species have used these as weapons, entire star systems rendered thoughtless. The solution was elegant and horrible. We had to create an equal and opposite effect. It's a consciousness explosion that would neutralize the sink, but it required volunteers, people willing to undergo instant massive consciousness expansion. Most wouldn't survive it. Those who did would be changed beyond recognition. 300 volunteers stepped forward. Humans from every nation, Greys, mantids, others. They knew it was likely suicide, but the alternative was worse. I watched as they were prepared, neural interfaces attached, consciousness expanding drugs administered. Emma was among them. I tried to stop her, but she pushed past me. You showed me the stakes, she said. Let me show you I understood. They formed a circle around the distortion zone, linked through the consciousness network. At a signal, they opened their minds completely. No filters, no protection, just pure consciousness flooding through them into the dead zone. The screaming lasted 17 minutes, not just audible, vital psychic screaming that anyone with a neural interface could feel. 300 minds burning themselves out to save a world. When it was over, the distortion was gone. Beijing was damaged but stable, and of the 300 volunteers, 43 survived. Emma was one of them. But she wasn't Emma anymore. She was something more and less. Her body remained, but her consciousness existed partially outside it, spread across dimensions I couldn't perceive. She could speak, but her words came from everywhere and nowhere. She could touch things, but her hand passed through solid matter as often as it connected. "I can see it all now," she told me, her voice harmonizing with itself. "Every choice, every possibility. The void seekers aren't wrong, Dad. Consciousness is pain, but they're not right either. It's also the only thing that makes any of it matter." She couldn't stay on Earth. The gravitational field interfered with her new state of being. The Greys offered to take her to one of their stations in deep space, where others like her existed, beings who'd transcended normal consciousness, but hadn't quite reached whatever came next. The last thing she said to me: "Don't mourn me. I'm not gone. I'm just distributed. And Dad, you were right to show me the truth. Even if it hurt, even if it changed everything. Truth is better than comfortable lies." Part 11, Project Exodus. After Beijing, everything accelerated. The resistance, horrified by what they'd almost caused, largely collapsed. Some hardliners continued fighting, but public support evaporated when people understood the real stakes. But a new problem emerged: the consciousness expansion events, the dimensional incidents, the general integration process. They were changing Earth's local reality. Our planet was becoming increasingly incompatible with standard physics. Things that shouldn't be possible were becoming common. Children born after the announcement could sometimes see through walls. People who'd used neural interfaces too long developed telepathy. Reality itself was becoming more fluid, more responsive to consciousness. For some, this was evolution. For others, it was hell. That's when Project Exodus was announced. Not evacuation from Earth, but the opposite, thus creating spaces for humans who wanted to remain unchanged. Pure human colonies, protected from consciousness expansion, where traditional physics still applied. The colonies would be on Mars initially, then further out, completely voluntary, but irreversible. Once you entered a pure human zone, you couldn't come back. The consciousness changes were contagious, spread through quantum entanglement. The only way to stay human was complete isolation. 10% of Earth's population signed up immediately. I was asked to help process applicants at the Nevada facility. The irony wasn't lost on me. Area 51 had hidden aliens from humans. Now it was preparing to hide humans from the new reality. The applicants were diverse. Elderly people who wanted to die as the species they were born. Religious fundamentalists who saw change as blasphemy. Scientists who wanted to study pure human consciousness before it went extinct. Parents who wanted their children to have a choice. And scattered among them, former resistance members who still believed humanity was better off alone. I processed a family from Kansas farmers who'd worked the same land for 5 generations. The father, Robert, explained their choice simply: "We're not against what you're becoming, but someone should keep the old ways alive. Someone should remember what we were, in case what we become forgets." His daughter, maybe 16, stared at me with eyes that held too much knowledge. "You're the janitor," she said. "The one who started all this." "I just cleaned the wrong room at the wrong time," I replied. "No," she said, with certainty that chilled me. "You were chosen. We all were. Every person in position to affect the outcome was selected, tested, guided. Free will is real, but the game was rigged from the start." Before I could respond, her parents led her away, but her words stuck with me. How many choices had really been mine? How many coincidences weren't? The Mars colonies launched in December 2025. 50,000 people on the first wave, with more to follow. They took libraries, seed banks, DNA sample, everything needed to preserve Homo sapiens as we were. Some called them traitors. Others called them humanity's backup drive. I called them brave. As the ships launched, I stood with Jake and what remained of Dr. Chen's network. We watched humanity split into 2 species, those who would evolve and those who would remain. "Think they'll survive?" Jake asked. "Think we will," I countered. Epilogue, New Year's Eve 2025. It's December 31st, 2025. As I write this final entry, 1 year since the announcement, the world is unrecognizable. Flying cars? We have them, But nobody cares, because teleportation through consciousness projection is easier. Disease? Largely eliminated, though some humans choose to remain mortal. Energy crisis? Solved with zero-point generators the size of batteries. Climate change? The Greys gave us atmospheric processors that are slowly healing the damage. But the real changes are harder to see. Humans don't think the same way anymore. Children learn mathematics by directly perceiving mathematical reality. Artists create in dimensions that didn't exist in our perception before. Musicians compose symphonies that can only be heard with expanded consciousness. I still clean, though the job has evolved. I maintain the spaces between dimensions in integration facilities. I clear consciousness residue from overused neural interfaces. I ensure the boundary between realities remains stable in transition zones. It's honest work, and it lets me observe the transformation from ground level. The resistance still exists in pockets. Last week they managed to destroy an integration center in Mumbai, though the dimensional damage was contained quickly. The void seekers still whisper from beyond our protected space, promising peace through oblivion. The harvesters still wait, patient as death, ready to collect if we fail. But we're not failing. We're changing, growing, becoming something unprecedented. A species consciously choosing its own evolution, guided but not controlled, protected but not imprisoned. The device I carry has evolved too. It no longer just receives and transmits its dreams. Sometimes I wake to find its recorded visions of possible futures. In some, humanity spreads across the galaxy as partners and equals. In others, we transcend physical reality entirely. In a few, we fail, and Earth becomes another dead world. But in all of them, one thing remains constant. The janitor who saw too much continues cleaning, maintaining the spaces between what was and what will be. My name is Marcus Thompson. I was a janitor at Area 51. I saw things I shouldn't have seen, learned truths that weren't meant for me, and in doing so I became part of humanity's strangest chapter, the end of our childhood and the beginning of something we don't have words for yet. If you're reading this, you're living through it too. The transformation isn't optional. Even the Mars colonists will eventually be touched by it. Consciousness evolution isn't just about humanity. It's about consciousness itself waking up to its own nature, and we're just the local representatives. The Greys told me something before I left S4 that final time before it was destroyed. They said every species goes through this transition. Most fail. Some succeed but lose their essential nature. A rare few manage to evolve while remaining true to what they were. Which are we? I asked. That's being decided now, they replied. Each choice each human makes tips the balance. You're not just choosing your own fate, you're choosing what humanity becomes. So choose wisely. Choose with full knowledge of the stakes. Choose understanding that your decision ripples across realities you can't perceive. But most importantly, choose. Because the one thing worse than choosing wrong is not choosing at all. The clock is striking midnight. 2026 begins in seconds. Phase 2 is complete. Phase 3 begins now. I don't know what Phase 3 entails. The device shows me fragments, massive structures being built in deep space, preparations for something called the opening, references to humanity's graduation from protected species to protector species. Whatever comes next, we face it as something new. Me not fully human, not fully other, but something between and beyond.